The sun beat down mercilessly on Oak Ridge Heights, a pristine suburban community where the lawns were always manicured, the hedges meticulously trimmed, and the neighbors, well, they watched. They always watched. Marcus Johnson knew this as he spread his beach towel across the emerald grass of the community park, deliberately setting up his small folding chair and cooler in the public space that his HOA fees helped maintain. At 42, Marcus was exhausted. Not just from the grueling 60-hour work weeks he'd been pulling as a corporate attorney specializing in civil rights cases, but from the constant vigilance required simply to exist in spaces where his skin color made him an anomaly. Oak Ridge Heights was 87% white, a statistic Marcus had researched before purchasing his colonial-style home 3 months ago. He'd moved in knowing what to expect, but hoping, perhaps naively, that in 2023 his credentials, his Harvard law degree, and his impeccable professional reputation might matter more than his appearance. He peeled off his t-shirt, revealing a physique maintained through disciplined early morning workouts, and settled back in his chair. The community guidelines, which he'd read cover to cover twice, highlighting and annotating, explicitly stated that residents could use the park facilities for recreational activities, including but not limited to sunbathing, picnicking, and reading. Marcus had brought all three. His bare chest soaking up vitamin D, a small container of fresh fruit beside him, and the latest Colson Whitehead novel in his hands. From the corner of his eye, he noticed her immediately. The woman in the pink cardigan power-walking along the park's perimeter, thumb clutched in her manicured hand, her gaze locked on him with the intensity of a heat-seeking missile. Marcus recognized her, Patricia Whitfield, treasurer of the Oak Ridge Heights Homeowners Association and self-appointed community watchdog. They crossed paths at his welcome meeting, and her smile had never quite reached her eyes as she handed him his welcome packet. Marcus turned a page in his book, maintaining his composure as Patricia completed her third lap around the park, each circuit bringing her closer to his position like a vulture circling its prey. He'd been here before, not this exact scenario, but adjacent versions of it. The questioning looks, the suspicious glances, the unspoken accusation, "You don't belong here." "Excuse me," Patricia's voice sliced through the summer air. "Are you a resident of Oak Ridge Heights?" Marcus looked up slowly, his expression carefully neutral. "Good afternoon, Patricia. Yes, I am. We met at the HOA meeting in March. I'm at 47 Willow Lane." Patricia's lips thinned to a bloodless line. "Well, I don't recall seeing you before. What exactly are you doing?" "Sunbathing. Reading. Enjoying the amenities my monthly HOA fees provide." Marcus's tone remained measured, professional, the same voice he used in courtrooms when opponents underestimated him. "This area is for residents only," Patricia insisted, her knuckles whitening around her phone. "I'll need to see some identification." Marcus closed his book, marking his place carefully. "No, Patricia, you don't need to see my identification. I'm not legally obligated to provide that to you." Her face flushed crimson, clashing with her pink cardigan. "If you're really a resident, you shouldn't have a problem proving it." As Patricia raised her phone to eye level, Marcus noticed her finger hovering over the emergency call button. He'd seen that gesture too many times before, both personally and professionally. He knew what came next. "I'm calling the police," Patricia announced, her voice carrying across the park where other residents had begun to gather, watching the confrontation unfold. "This is a private community, and we have rules." Marcus sat up straighter, setting his book aside. What Patricia Whitfield couldn't know, was that Marcus Johnson had spent the last 15 years in his legal career specializing in exactly this type of encounter, and he was exhaustively, methodically prepared for what would happen next. As Patricia frantically spoke into her phone, Marcus Johnson reached for his own device, tapping the screen to activate the voice recording app, a habit he developed years ago, when he first started documenting these encounters. He placed the phone casually on the arm of his chair, its microphone pointed toward Patricia. 9-211, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice came through faintly as Patricia's volume increased with her agitation. "There's an unauthorized person in our private community park," Patricia declared, her eyes never leaving Marcus. "He's refusing to identify himself, and I'm concerned for the safety of our residents." Marcus shook his head slightly, maintaining his composure. He'd heard these coded phrases before, both as a victim and as counsel for countless clients. The language was always carefully crafted to suggest threat without explicitly mentioning race, a thin veneer of plausible deniability. By now, a small crowd had gathered at the edges of the park. Among them, Marcus recognized the Hendersons from 2 doors down, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. A woman he didn't know was filming the encounter on her phone. Good, Marcus thought. More evidence. "Ma'am, is this person threatening you or others?" the dispatcher asked, following standard protocol. Patricia hesitated, glancing around at the growing audience. He's being confrontational and refuses to leave private property. Marcus spoke clearly, ensuring his voice would be captured by both his recording and Patricia's call. I am Marcus Johnson, resident at 47 Willow Lane. I pay $375 monthly in HOA fees, which entitle me to use this park as outlined in Section 7.3 of the Community Guidelines. I am not required to present identification to another resident. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the park entrance 15 minutes later, their lights flashing but sirens silent. Marcus had moved from his chair, though he put his shirt back on. He recognized the calculated risk in staying. Leaving would avoid immediate conflict but surrender his rights. Staying would escalate the situation but establish precedent. Officer Daniels approached first, a younger officer with a crew cut following 2 steps behind. Marcus noted their name badges and body cameras, mentally cataloging details as he taught countless clients to do. Good afternoon, officers, Marcus greeted them before Patricia could speak. I'm Marcus Johnson. I live at 47 Willow Lane in this community. I'm being harassed while lawfully enjoying community amenities. Officer Daniels looked between Marcus and Patricia, clearly assessing the situation. We received a call about an unauthorized person in the park. Patricia stepped forward. He refuses to show identification proving he belongs here. Our HOA rules clearly state. Actually, Marcus interrupted calmly, the HOA bylaws, which I've studied thoroughly, contain no provision requiring residents to carry or present identification within community spaces. I'd be happy to show the officers my driver's license, though it's not legally required. Marcus reached slowly for his wallet, maintaining eye contact with Officer Daniels as he retrieved his license and bar association card. The younger officer's eyebrows raised slightly at the sight of the legal credentials. You're an attorney? Officer Daniels asked, examining the license. Yes, specializing in civil rights and discrimination cases, Marcus replied evenly. I've represented numerous clients in situations remarkably similar to this one. Patricia's face flushed deeper. That's irrelevant. He was being destructive. A man stepped forward from the gathered crowd. Dr. Wilson, Marcus recognized him from the neighborhood directory. That's not true. I've been walking my dog for the past hour. This gentleman was just reading quietly until you approached him, Patricia. Officer Daniels handed Marcus back his identification. Sir, you're obviously within your rights to be here. He turned to Patricia. Ma'am, calling emergency services without a legitimate emergency is misuse of police resources. Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her certainty faltering as she realized the situation had completely reversed. The younger officer leaned toward his partner, whispering something that made Officer Daniels nod grimly. Ms. Whitfield, the younger officer said, we'd like to speak with you privately about the nature of your call today. As the officers led Patricia toward their patrol car, Marcus remained seated, his expression neutral but his mind racing. His confrontation was over, but he knew from bitter experience it wouldn't be the last. The real question was what to do next. Let it go. File a formal complaint or pursue legal action. Whatever his decision, Marcus knew one thing with absolute certainty. Patricia Whitfield had chosen the wrong black man to harass on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. The following morning, Marcus sat at his kitchen island, nursing a cup of black coffee while reviewing the footage from yesterday's incident. After the police had left and the crowd dispersed, 3 neighbors had approached him separately, offering their cell phone recordings of the confrontation. Combined with his own audio recording and the police bodycam footage he'd already requested through official channels, Marcus was building a comprehensive record. His phone buzzed with a notification, an email from Richard Oakes, the HOA president, requesting an urgent discussion regarding yesterday's unfortunate misunderstanding. Marcus allowed himself a small, humorless smile. Misunderstanding. The polite euphemism didn't surprise him. The doorbell rang precisely at 10 o'clock a.m. Marcus opened it to find Richard Oakes shifting uncomfortably on his doorstep, a leather portfolio clutched in his hands. Behind him stood Patricia Whitfield, her expression a carefully composed mask of contrition. Good morning, Marcus, Richard began, his voice overly cheerful. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. May we come in? Marcus stepped aside, gesturing them into his meticulously decorated living room where a digital recorder sat conspicuously on the coffee table. Please have a seat. Would either of you like coffee? Both declined. Patricia perched on the edge of the sofa as if ready to flee, while Richard opened his portfolio, pulling out several documents. Marcus, first and foremost, I want to apologize on behalf of the Homeowners Association for yesterday's incident. It was a regrettable misunderstanding that doesn't reflect our community values. Marcus leaned back in his armchair. I appreciate that, Richard. Though I'm curious, what exactly was misunderstood? That I, as a homeowner, have the right to use community facilities? Or that calling the police on a black man engaged in lawful activity creates a potentially life-threatening situation? Richard flinched. That's not. We never intended. He composed himself. Patricia has something she'd like to say. Patricia cleared her throat. Mr. Johnson, I sincerely apologize for my actions yesterday. I was overzealous in my role as HOA treasurer and community safety coordinator. It wasn't because you're. She stumbled over the words she couldn't bring herself to say. Because I'm black, Marcus supplied calmly. Patricia's eyes dropped to her hands. It was about unfamiliarity. I can recognize you as a resident. Despite having met me at the welcome meeting, Marcus noted, and despite Dr. Wilson and the Hendersons recognizing me immediately. Richard interjected, we've prepared a formal written apology, and the HOA board has unanimously agreed to waive your HOA fees for the next 6 months as a gesture of goodwill. Marcus studied the documents Richard had placed on the table, the apology letter, the fee waiver, and a third document that appeared to be a confidentiality agreement. And in exchange for this goodwill gesture, you'd like me to sign this non-disclosure agreement and agree not to pursue any legal action against the HOA or Ms. Whitfield personally. Marcus asked, not bothering to hide his legal expertise. Richard shifted uncomfortably. It's standard procedure in dispute resolution. I'm sure it is, Marcus replied. Unfortunately, this isn't merely a dispute to be resolved with 6 months of waived fees. This is part of a documented pattern of racial profiling within HOA communities nationwide, something I've litigated extensively throughout my career. He reached for his laptop, opening it to reveal a spreadsheet. In fact, in preparation for purchasing my home here, I compiled data on 7 similar incidents in this community over the past 3 years. 3 involving delivery personnel, 2 involving guests of residents, 1 involving a landscaper, and 1 involving a new homeowner. All people of color, all reported by HOA board members for suspicious activity. Patricia's face had gone pale. Richard stared at Marcus with newfound wariness. Where did you get this information? Richard stammered. Public records, Richard. Police reports are public records. HOA meeting minutes are available to all homeowners. Social media posts about neighborhood concerns are remarkably revealing. Marcus closed his laptop. I chose this community knowing its history, documenting every interaction since my arrival and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Marcus stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I won't be signing your agreement or accepting your fee waiver. Instead, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development regarding discriminatory practices within the Oak Ridge Heights HOA. I'll also be requesting a full board meeting to discuss comprehensive anti-bias training for all HOA officers. Richard's facade of friendliness had completely evaporated. You planned this all along. No, Richard. Marcus replied evenly. I prepared for it. There's a difference. I hoped it wouldn't be necessary, but experience taught me to expect it. What happens next is entirely up to the board's response. As they left, Marcus noticed Patricia's hand trembling as she clutched her purse. The realization was clearly setting in. She hadn't just called the police on any black man enjoying the community park. She targeted someone who had spent years documenting, litigating, and fighting precisely this type of discrimination. And he was just getting started. News of the confrontation spread through Oak Ridge Heights like wildfire. By the following weekend, the incident had been dubbed Sunbathing while black on community social media pages, with residents taking clear sides. Several homeowners had placed small yard signs reading, "All niggers welcome here," a gesture that Marcus appreciated but recognized as performative allyship rather than substantive change. Meanwhile, Marcus moved methodically. He filed a promised complaint with HUD, submitted a detailed report to the ACLU documenting the incident within the broader context of HOA discrimination, and formally requested a special community meeting. His law firm, Daniels, Johnson & Wright, had granted him a temporary reduction in caseload to pursue what his managing partner called a necessary community service. On Thursday evening, Marcus's doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening it, he found Elaine Henderson from 2 doors down, clutching a folder and looking nervous. "Mr. Johnson, Marcus, I hope I'm not disturbing you," she began. "I've been wanting to talk to you since the incident, but I wasn't sure if you want to speak with any of us." Marcus invited her in, offering tea, which she accepted with visible relief. "I should have spoken up when Patricia confronted you," Elaine said, guilt evident in her voice. "My husband and I watched the whole thing. We knew you were our neighbor, but we hesitated, and I'm ashamed of that." Marcus nodded, acknowledging her admission without immediately absolving her. "May I ask what brings you here tonight, Elaine?" She opened her folder. "After what happened, some of us started talking, really talking for the first time about the racial dynamics in our community." She swallowed hard. "I've been the HOA secretary for 3 years. I have all the meeting minutes, all the incident reports, all the violation notices." Marcus leaned forward as Elaine spread several documents across his coffee table. "Patricia isn't the only problem," Elaine continued. There's a pattern in how violations are reported and enforced. Homeowners of color receive more citations, harsher penalties, and faster escalation to fines. She pointed to a spreadsheet. I've been keeping my own records because something felt wrong. I just didn't have the courage to say anything. The documents confirmed what Marcus had already suspected but provided even more damning evidence: internal HOA emails discussing maintaining neighborhood standards with thinly veiled racial coding, selective enforcement data, and rejected renovation approvals that appeared to target non-white homeowners. "Why are you showing me this now?" Marcus asked quietly. Elaine met his gaze directly for the first time. "Because Patricia and Richard are trying to organize a special vote to remove board members who support your calls for anti-bias training. They're claiming you're causing division in the community. 8 other homeowners and I want to stand with you at the meeting. We're prepared to testify about what we've witnessed." Marcus studied the woman before him, her discomfort evident, but her resolve apparently genuine. "This could get uncomfortable for you, Elaine. People like Patricia have long memories." "I know," she nodded. "But my children are watching how their parents respond to injustice. What happened to you was wrong, and staying silent makes me complicit." After Elaine left, Marcus called his law partner, Tanya Wright. "The case just got bigger," he explained, detailing Elaine's visit. "We've got insider documentation and witnesses willing to testify. This isn't just about one incident anymore." "Never was," Tanya replied. "You know that better than anyone. How do you want to proceed?" Marcus looked at the documents spread across his table, evidence of years of systematic discrimination hidden behind property values and community guidelines. "We expand the complaint," he said firmly. "Class action on behalf of all minority residents and property owners who face discriminatory treatment. We request a full federal investigation into the HOA's practices, and we prepare for significant resistance." "They'll claim you're being vindictive because of the park incident," Tanya warned. "Let them," Marcus replied. "We have the documentation, the witnesses, and the law on our side. And personally, I had enough of people like Patricia Whitfield deciding who belongs where." The next morning, as Marcus left for his office, he found Patricia Whitfield standing beside his mailbox. She jumped when she saw him, her expression a mixture of anger and fear. "You're destroying our community," she hissed. "All because of one little misunderstanding." Marcus regarded her calmly. "No, Patricia, I'm holding it accountable. There's a difference. We had a perfectly functioning system before you arrived," she insisted. "A system perfectly functioning for whom?" Marcus countered. "The evidence suggests it worked wonderfully for some residents and systematically disadvantaged others." Patricia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think you're so clever with your legal background and your civil rights crusade, but you don't understand how things work here. People don't like troublemakers, regardless of what color they are." Marcus smiled slightly. "That's where you're wrong, Patricia. I understand exactly how things work here. That's why I bought my house in this specific community, with this specific HOA, with its specific history of documented issues." He leaned in slightly. "I didn't stumble into your discrimination by accident. I chose this battlefield very deliberately." As comprehension dawned on Patricia's face, Marcus walked calmly to his car, leaving her standing speechless by his mailbox, finally understanding what she was truly facing. The Oak Ridge Heights Community Center buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled with additional residents standing along the walls for the emergency HOA meeting. Marcus sat in the front row, flanked by Tanya Wright and another colleague from his firm. Across the aisle, Patricia and Richard conferred in hushed, urgent tones, occasionally glancing in Marcus's direction. Local media had caught wind of the story. A reporter from the city newspaper sat in the back row, notebook in hand, while a local news van idled in the parking lot. What had begun as a neighborhood dispute was rapidly evolving into a story about systemic housing discrimination, exactly as Marcus had anticipated. Richard Oakes called the meeting to order, his usual confident demeanor noticeably strained. "Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this is a private homeowners meeting. Any recording or sharing of proceedings with outside parties violates our bylaws." Marcus raised his hand immediately. "Point of order, Mr. President. State law specifically permits recording of homeowners association meetings by members. Additionally, given that this meeting concerns allegations of civil rights violations, any attempt to prohibit documentation could be construed as obstruction." A murmur swept through the room. Richard's jaw tightened as he conceded, "Recordings are permitted, but I expect all members to conduct themselves with decorum." After covering standard meeting protocols, Richard addressed the elephant in the room. "We're here to discuss recent allegations made by Mr. Johnson regarding our community guidelines and enforcement procedures. The board firmly denies any discriminatory intent or practices." "Intent isn't the legal standard," Tanya interjected crisply. "Disparate impact on protected classes is sufficient to establish a violation under the Fair Housing Act." Richard continued as if she hadn't spoken. We've reviewed Mr. Johnson's concerns and proposed the following resolution: a community guideline review committee, diversity statements added to our HOA materials, and a formal apology to Mr. Johnson for any misunderstanding. Patricia nodded emphatically from her seat, clearly having helped craft this minimalist response. Marcus stood. Mr. President, those measures are wholly inadequate given the scope and duration of the documented discrimination. Before addressing proposed remedies, I'd like to present evidence establishing the pattern of disparate treatment. That won't be necessary, Richard cut in. We're here to move forward, not dwell on isolated incidents that may have been misinterpreted. With respect, Elaine Henderson's voice rang out from the middle of the room as she stood. I believe Mr. Johnson's evidence should be heard. 7 other homeowners stood with her in silent solidarity. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus methodically presented the evidence, statistical analyses of violation notices, columns through property improvement denials, and documentation of selective enforcement. The room grew increasingly uncomfortable as the pattern became undeniable. Patricia's face flushed crimson. Richard repeatedly tried to interrupt, only to be reminded by other homeowners that everyone deserved to be heard. Dr. Wilson, the retired professor who had defended Marcus in the park, spoke next. I've lived here for 15 years, and while I never experienced this discrimination personally, I've observed it happening to others. My shame is that I recognized it but did nothing substantive to stop it. One by one, residents came forward with their own stories. The Pakistani family whose children were repeatedly reported for suspicious behavior while playing in the community park, the Chilean architect whose design plans were rejected 3 times while identical plans from white homeowners sailed through, the black grandmother who received violation notices about her grandchildren's toys in the yard while white families with similar infractions went unsighted. Richard's attempts to control the narrative collapsed entirely when Elaine presented her documentation. As HOA secretary, I've maintained these records for 3 years. The data speaks for itself. Homeowners of color receive 340% more violation notices and face fines at a rate 8 times higher than white homeowners for identical issues. Patricia finally broke her silence, standing abruptly. This is absurd. We're being painted as racists for trying to maintain community standards. If certain residents can abide by the rules everyone agreed to when purchasing here, that's not our fault. The rules aren't the issue, Patricia, Marcus replied calmly. It's the deliberately inequitable enforcement of those rules. An older white man whom Marcus didn't recognize stood up. I've been on 3 HOA boards over the past 40 years, including this one when we first established the guidelines. I need to say something that's long overdue. He took a deep breath. Some of these policies were explicitly designed to be selectively enforceable to maintain community character. That was the euphemism we used back then for keeping certain types of people out or making them uncomfortable enough to leave. A stunned silence fell over the room. The newspaper reporter was scribbling frantically. In light of these revelations, Marcus said into the silence, I propose the following: immediate suspension of Patricia Whitfield and Richard Oakes from the HOA board pending investigation, mandatory third-party review of all HOA policies, and establishment of an oversight committee with diverse representation to monitor future enforcement actions. Richard sputtered in protest, but before he could form a coherent objection, a vote was called. Hands rose throughout the room, not just the minority homeowners, but many white residents as well. The motion passed by an overwhelming majority. As the meeting adjourned, the reporter approached Marcus. Mr. Johnson, would you care to comment on what just happened here tonight? Marcus looked around the room where clusters of neighbors were engaged in intense conversation, some with teeters, others with determined expressions. What happened here tonight is just the beginning. Oak Ridge Heights is experiencing what many communities across America need: an honest reckoning with policies designed to perpetuate inequality under the guise of protecting property values. As the crowd thinned, Patricia stormed toward the exit, stopping briefly beside Marcus. You've ruined everything, she hissed. Are you satisfied now? Marcus met her gaze evenly. This was never about satisfaction, Patricia. It was about justice. And unlike satisfaction, justice isn't about one person. It's about creating systems that work equitably for everyone. As Patricia pushed through the doors, Marcus noticed her husband waiting in the parking lot, looking mortified as he recognized the news crew filming his wife's dramatic exit. Tanya nudged Marcus. Not bad for 3 months in the neighborhood. Ready for phase 2? Marcus nodded, watching the diverse group of neighbors who had risen to stand with him. Absolutely. The real work is just beginning.